Welcome once again to the Outcast Intellectual Podcast with the eternally non-awkward openings. Yes, you're welcome. This is Lana. Welcome.
Hey guys.
And Lana's been in the comments many times, and we've also had many cool conversations, and this is going to be one of them. And the main reason why I wanted to ask her about this is because, well, surprise, surprise, she actually has experience and knowledge of actually being what we're talking about. Though it's interesting because this is the reason why I started the actual live, because I was about to ask you this question not live and then kind of make it completely pointless, which was, I think when we first started talking, I think I accidentally called you a coach.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, it's not coaching. And it was funny because you just messaged me, but now, after having spent time with you both on the phone or in person, now I'll have to translate things to a bad Isaac impersonation of how you would say it. It was like, it's not coaching, it's mentoring. And I guess, yeah, I mean, could you, I guess, start us off with what you think the big difference is between being a coach and being a mentor, and are they mutually exclusive, or is it just kind of
Yeah. No, I think it's really important because today everybody is just mixing things up. And then you get plenty of coaches who are not doing coaching per se, but they actually do a mix of the stuff. And then if you actually know what you're looking for and you're looking for that specific person, you can ask for it and see if the person is actually named the right way, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. There is actually coach, there is mentor, and then there is consultant.
okay.
And they should be all doing pretty much different things. Because for coaching, it's mainly in the mindset niche. It's mainly about asking questions and leading to some kind of outcome, which you should have an aha moment or some kind of insight.
Okay.
With mentoring, the person is actually walking the talk, so they experience stuff, they know the patterns, they know what kind of questions they can ask you, or what kind of things they should tell you so you get the result that you want.
Okay.
Which is kind of a huge difference because coach doesn't have to have that. They just need to ask you some questions.
So they can just have the framework and replicate it
Yeah.
without actually. Okay.
Yeah, and with consultant, they just do the stuff from the I would say expertise. They just know stuff and they advise you on stuff. But
Okay.
they don't have to have the real experience.
I think even not even, I guess, the positioning, and not positioning in terms of a business sense, but the positioning as in how the relationship works is going to be different too, because a mentor, it's basically, it feels like you're going to the karate dojo and you're being taught karate. I can't say karate after knowing that that's not how they say it. And I mean, I'm probably still saying it in a way that doesn't make sense, but I can't say it the American way. But in that sense, it's very much, the teacher, the student, even the coach element. I can see that's kind of like that in a way, but then with the consultant, it's very much more kind of a lateral positioning.
Yeah.
So I guess, what do you think is the issue when people try to position themselves as being, say, a mentor, if they're really just being a coach then? Because I think there's the business end of everything, but I guess since we're already talking about the differences between them, it makes sense to talk about that.
Yeah, the funny thing is that actually you can find out really easily because they wouldn't just know what they're talking about.
Okay.
You can just ask the questions and then they would probably wouldn't be able to answer your questions because they would be like, oh, Well, I can help you with that. And they usually like try to avoid answering the question on a deep level
Okay.
because they don't have the knowledge first and they don't have the experience.
Okay. So,
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was just about to say that it's like I have been on plenty of calls where like some of the coaches would tell me that they can't help me, but they could connect me with like network or stuff, and I was like, I'm here looking for the coaching,
Mm,
which, like if you are the coach, you should be able to ask the questions. Like in any case, like it's just asking the questions. So how can you say that you can't help me? Like you can't ask the questions.
it is. I mean, the funny thing to me is I find it at least commendable that they would even say that they don't know, simply because we know that there are, those people out there where they try to be the coach or they try to be the this or they try to be the that, and they won't even kind of let go of the narrative that they know exactly what they're talking about. So it's like obviously they were letting you down, like in terms of what the value they could offer to some extent, but at least they mentioned I don't know that, and
Yeah,
here's
but
what maybe
it
okay.
was actually a slip up, and because I was in place with mindset where I was, I'm listening. Like I'm
Mhm.
paying attention what the person is actually saying,
Mhm.
which is like a big deal in mentoring and coaching because most of those people would be just like, oh, okay, I need to say this, I need to say that, and they wouldn't listen. It's like the biggest fuck up here in the coaching. And is it allowed to say those kind of words?
Oh no, we don't fucking swear on the Outcast Intellectual Podcast. Keep that shit out of here.
Okay, good. Yeah, so like it's just like the biggest issue in like communication overall. People just are not used to listen because they
Mm.
try to like find the answers or say the right thing or do just something.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think of because, and pardon me if I don't know like every single episode that you've been on for how much you've seen of it. Apparently, I've done about 30 of them already, which I hadn't known, and a number of them have been with my buddy Chrislyn, who she has a psychology background, and one thing that I've regularly pointed out before, like using like the Dr. Phil, like the marriage counselor or whatever as an example, someone who later got divorced, is that people don't consider, at least I don't think as much as they should, the reality that just because you have a title doesn't mean that you necessarily know exactly what you're talking about. And even when it comes to coaching, for example, in some ways it's kind of a blessing for a lot of experts because now they can kind of, I guess, take ownership of themselves to a certain extent. Like if they can offer a form of value, now they can just take ownership of being able to offer that to individuals rather than having to go through like colleges that don't pay them enough and so on. But at the same time, just like how a psychologist can go to school and get the education and whatnot, but on their own individual level be compromised in a way that compromises their ability to offer that value to others. It can be the same thing with coaches, where it's like you have experts who, yes, they're very good at what they do, but they're horrible teachers.
Yeah.
And maybe like their ego is what pushed them to get better and better so they can show how much better they are than everybody else. And now their business model is to help other people get better. Like that is, it's horribly misaligned. So yeah, I can see how that would be kind of a common issue in the industry.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because most of those people just think like, there is this being 2 steps ahead is enough.
Mm.
Like what the fuck? Like how is it enough?
To
Like
like
would you go to the master, like I don't know, like kung fu master who would be like 2 steps ahead of you? Or like,
no, no,
like
that's the colleague. Like that's the person that's standing beside you, working
yeah,
through the thing with the
yeah,
persons,
exactly. Like
not the
it's
one
the
you're paying.
person it's the person next to you or like the one who just went there longer, but it's not like somebody who should be teaching you. And I don't see why people would like think that having like their mindset dealt with is less of the responsibility than like going to, I don't know, martial arts classes or being a doctor or somebody, you know, you don't get like taught by some person who is 2 steps ahead.
Yeah. And it's like that they don't go opening dojos anyway. Who to stick with the martial arts metaphor, which is funny because I know that you actually do, you train yourself. So it's just funny that like how we tend to come up with metaphors or reflect experiences to a certain degree. But like you don't see blue belts opening dojos. They don't do it. Green belts don't do it. Red belts don't do it. Brown belts don't do it. Whatever the belt system might be in a given dojo, or if it's done at all, the point being is that they don't do it, and that's exactly why. Because I mean, you can help someone if you're just 2 steps ahead, but to ask someone to pay you, it's not the same to me. Like that is when you're in the group, say that the coach has enough people that they can do a group, and then you talk to the other people in the group who maybe are 2 steps ahead of you. That's when that helping thing comes in. So I almost wonder, and this is something I don't have any experience with because I never tried to be a coach of any kind, if that is part of kind of like a business model of people teaching others how to be coaches, just like how there's I think for like marketing, like one of the big things is if you can help someone, you have a moral imperative to sell them on letting you help them. You know what I mean? Which makes it easier for someone to justify, wanting to close others so they can do their thing. So I can see how that might be maybe the belief shift that a lot of coach training coaches, I almost slipped myself up there, might say. It's like, no, you don't need to be an X expert. You just need to be a few steps ahead of them, because now it's easier for them to justify becoming a coach and buying your shit to become a coach.
Yeah, I mean it's really complicated because at one point there was just a boom where everybody decided that they become coaches.
Right. And started
And
messaging everybody, trying to be their coach.
I was just like, don't you have any kind of responsibility, especially like in terms of mindset? You know, you can just like first the energy you share with people is just contagious. There are studies proving it. Like if I will be on the call and I will be fucked up, I will naturally attract people like me, you know?
Right.
And then they are surprised, oh, those people are like me, and I need to, I need to be 2 steps ahead of them. That's exactly the point, like that.
Yeah. And even if someone, because I mean, you and me are at least relatively aligned when it comes to the energy thing. There's still things that, you, Yvette, and me, obviously are not completely aligned on. But if somebody like doesn't actually like believe in the element of like energy, as we were discussing, it's still, even if you only believe in like mirror neurons and just pure physiology, it's still going to be true, because like the way that people act is still going to affect others around them. So I like to keep that in mind, because I'm not going to assume that people, just because I, see energy a given way, that other people are going to too. So there's no excuse.
No, but actually there are actually like scientific studies proving those kind of things. They were testing the emotions of like volunteers, and they would be doing like seriously disgusting, to be honest, test where they would like let people smell sweat, and they would take like from 2 groups, where one group would be like sweating because they're excited from like adrenaline sports and stuff, and the other one would be like depressed and sweating from some kind of pressure.
I've never been so depressed that I started sweating. This must be horrible.
So yeah, and they would just like took those kind of like smelly pots and stuff and materials, and they would let volunteers smell it and tell them like what kind of emotion does it like, you know, evoke.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just like some of the studies are really, really like disgusting. I wouldn't want to do that, but at the same time, it just shows like how much the emotions and the energy in it influences people on totally different level without them knowing, because it's still the sweat, it's the same material, just like different thing.
Two things. I don't know if we'll be able to top depression sweating as something that I've learned that I'm going to learn from this episode, but at least know that you've already reached a high point. And second, I think that the reason why I always clarify the thing when it comes to energy is not because I think it's like a thing where you need to go based on faith, because you know how good I am at that,
Yeah.
or how interested I am in that for, for that matter. Um, but you and I both know that you can have the most logical, rational point in the world. Doesn't mean somebody needs to listen. So that's why I always just try to speak to. I'm a copywriter. I try to speak to people wherever they might be. But it is interesting to even just think about, at least for me, as someone who has never tried to be a coach but has experienced people trying to be coaches, uh, because that the neediness of some people, which, like any other entrepreneurial thing, you're going to have a lot of people who are just doing it to get out of their job, and they don't really have, at least as I would term it, like an entrepreneurial personality. And that doesn't mean like that they would always be one, but even just having the mental fortitude to kind of stick it out to get the clients and stuff. Like a lot of people just start getting needy because they get taken off that employee life support system, and now like they again, like we were talking about before, they don't have the personal growth to actually be what they need to be yet. And there was a guy a while back, which is even funnier, that I'm mentioning this, considering that I now actually have a girlfriend. But he was a dating coach, and I never talked to this guy before, didn't know who he was. This is before I learned to stop accepting most friend requests. And uh, I just out of the blue, I get that message. And anybody who's been approached by, I want to come up with a clever name for like pseudo coaches. You know how there's like Dimitri's for the DM. Well, that is what that is, isn't it? Yeah, he's a Dimitri, one of the people trying to close you in the DMs.
Okay.
And he basically wants to be like a dating coach for me. Knows nothing about me, knows nothing about like my goals or anything else. He just sees, oh, it's a dude. He must want to hook up with chicks, right? This must be one of his main life goals. And basically, like, I was trying to be like really considerate with him, because this is before I knew that he was going to be obnoxious about it. And like trying to point out, it's like, hey, like, as a marketer, like you want to make sure that you're speaking to the right people, like an audience who has the issue or whatever, the stuff. And he keeps trying to turn it back around. And he keeps trying to close me. And I'm like, dude, I'm a marketer. I know what you're doing. You're trying to find the bleeding neck problem. You're trying to expose this. You're trying to do that. It's like, I'm not interested in the whole, and I'm not, I wasn't saying it like that. I mean, it was a messenger chat. But the point being is that after all this, I'm trying to help him, trying to be nice, all this stuff. At the very end, before he leaves, he tries to make it seem basically as if like I'm just not willing to do whatever. And my response was, okay, so after this whole conversation of you trying to talk somebody who's not interested in what you're selling into buying what you're trying to sell them, you show that you can't handle rejection. You sound like a great dating coach, dude. Peace out.
Yeah.
So
Actually, like it's fascinating because I had actually a few days ago I had conversation with one of the women who said that she's like a businesswoman and she has loads of businesses. She's kind of interested in personal development, and stuff. And I was like really being nice and just tell her that I'm not interested, that I'm having like my own things going on and stuff. And she was like ending this whole conversation, which was quite like okay, but she was ending it like, okay, and let me know if you would like to like make a huge impact and be uh a part of the community that is making changes, you know, like it was like passive aggressive message.
While
and
also being like a Facebook headline.
and I was like, are you joking? Like, I just told you that I had my own things going on and I'm doing my own thing. And like, you will finish it with like, oh yeah, your thing is bad and my thing is the right one. So let me know when you're interested in doing it the right way.
I would have instantly, and this is because it's me, but come back like, well, as you may or may not have heard when I told you, because I don't know if you were listening, I also have a group and I'm also doing things to help people, though it's not really focused on, charging them to make money, uh, unlike your situation. And I would offer you to this group to join this group, but I'm not sure you'd be the right fit. But have a good one. Old sports.
I'm not doing that, you know.
But I know you wouldn't, but that's why I had to mention that I would, because and this is something what this is one of the areas where I feel like it's you and Yvette. For people who don't know, Yvette is my girlfriend. It's like
Oh,
you and
yeah,
I know
we had
this.
to say hi, Yvette.
Yeah, where are you, Yvette? I don't know if I can't see the comments or what. Like maybe she's been spamming us this whole time, but I can't see it.
I
So if
don't
you
know.
have,
I haven't quite.
yeah, it's weird like that sometimes. But that's one area where I'm definitely different than the two of you, where I take a certain pleasure in kind of outing people like that. But I don't know, because I also don't like that they try to go after people and just kind of force themselves onto them. But that does kind of expose one of the darker elements of, I don't want to say being a coach or being a mentor, but the industry as it is in terms of like generating an income from being one, where there are a lot of people like that. It does seem like that's kind of like the fad has not, I'm not going to say passed, but it's not where it was, where like maybe half a year ago or maybe even a year ago, I don't know, where it seemed like everybody was just DMing me all the time. Or maybe being unplugged from Facebook a bit has helped me. Maybe it's going just as strongly. Um, but when you were first getting into like trying to offer that to other people and help people in that way, like how did you kind of, I guess, like what was your experience realizing that other people were like that? Or did you realize that before you even, you know, decided to start helping people?
Yeah, so my own experience was that I started just like learning mindset and stuff because of myself.
Okay.
But since I was like in high school, everybody would ask me for advice and people would just like naturally
Hmm.
come to me asking for some advice, you know, about life or whatever. And actually in high school, I had a nickname Walking Library because they would like,
Walking library.
they would just get all the answers. I don't know how I do it, to be honest, but it's just like every time they ask, I would just have an answer, not like the specific one. I could tell them, like, if I wouldn't know, I would point them out where they should get the information, you know.
You're a bad coach. You couldn't answer them. You couldn't answer them on the spot. You had to refer them to a network or something else.
Yeah, so that was in high school. And then I started to be really interested in mindset and things just starting to kind of like roll. More people would come to me and they would be like, oh my God, you should be doing it like professionally, you know. And I had actually like quite a few people who told me that because of meeting me, they actually find a new purpose in life. And there was some kind of suicidal people as well. So it was like
Oh,
big aha moment, you know, because like for me, it was, okay, I'm doing this. And it's nice that I'm helping people and I love helping people. But it wasn't like I have to do it because I have some kind of responsibility. But when those people mentioned that I actually saved their life, I was like, okay, how many people I'm actually not influencing or impacting, and how big difference I could make if I would do it professionally. Which
And I
is
mean,
what
you were talking, sorry.
it's just like, it was a really huge deal for me when I was like, okay, I should be doing this professionally, because at the same time, in the meanwhile, I was trying to find, because I get into the plateau when I wouldn't know where to go next, because all the books and stuff I had my hands on would just keep mentioning the same things over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, I need to find out more. So I was trying to find a coach or some kind of help which would like get me over the plateau. And it was ridiculous. Like, it was this phase where I would just have those discovery calls with coaches, and they would be like asking more about me, like for me to coach them instead of the other way around,
Power of the walking library,
And I was like, okay, this is probably not the person I should be like, paying to help
right?
me.
The person who's 2 steps behind, not even 2 steps ahead. Or
Yeah, and
maybe
especially like, it was really ridiculous because I started to post those kind of things, like, insights from the books and like just things that I was thinking about on my profile on Facebook. And people who would be like pretty much on a lower, let's say, level of consciousness, or like or lower in mindset than I was trying to get me as a client. And I was like, okay, so you are reacting, or you are triggered by my posts, and you're trying to discuss it with me. You are not able to explain it, or like even take in as an open-minded person that this is how it is. And at the same time, you think that you can coach me. Like, how is that going to work?
Speaking of something not working, quick flash out of existence and back into it, because I hate when my video feed, why? I feel like it's not being as sharp as it usually is. Whatever you want, webcam.
I think
Point
it's
thing.
because of the window. That's one.
What do I need to like change the blinds or something?
Now you can use these, like, just to get a little bit of less light.
And in case you couldn't already tell, Lana also has lots of experience when it comes to photography that I obviously do not. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to get used to figuring out some of that stuff, some of that lighting stuff. But not to make it entirely about my aesthetic appearance given the webcam. But I think that kind of goes back to the element of, again, like why people even get into it, similar to like why people get into being a teacher, because there are people who, try to become a teacher just because, I mean, generally you don't get fired from being a teacher if you're doing a half decent job. Granted, I don't think people need them in a whole lot of places. But the point being, there's a huge difference between doing that because you want a form of job security and doing it because you love teaching. And it's the same thing, I think, in both cases, where if you do it for any reason other than because you love to help people, first of all, you're just not going to be able to help them very much. And second of all, you're not really going to be able to stick it out because, I mean, and this is a big reason why I never had an interest in being a coach, is like listening to people talk about stuff that I find is stupid when I'm just like, okay, but you don't need to do this. And then the person just spends the next 20 minutes telling me why they have to do that. I don't have the patience for that. It's like, look, I already told you what you need to do. You're not paying me to do, well, maybe if they're paying me, maybe I'd be a little bit more patient, but probably not. There are very few things that can increase my patience. And I think that that does come back to that natural, maybe desire, but just inclination towards helping too, because it's almost like you couldn't avoid being the person that people ask for help from, even when you were asking other people or trying to ask other people, for help or guidance in that sense. It just ended up being you. So it is just kind of interesting how it's almost as if there's some sort of energetic thing going on there, one might say. And I don't have an explanation for you if you don't believe in energy in this case, because that's kind of hard to explain. It's just physiology. But it is also funny because having spent time around you in real life now, I can just imagine you like walking down a hall, just like being on your phone, and someone just walks up to you and just immediately starts bombarding you with information, like teenagers tend to do, with like no regard for what's going on. And then you just look at them and it's like, did you try, whatever, and they just make a suggestion. Like, yeah, I can see it happening. So I
Yeah.
guess when it comes to like coaching and mentoring, could you even imagine not doing it? Because it's interesting, because like originally you started out where you were just the person people came to for help, but it's kind of difficult to imagine you not doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, like I did some other stuff. I mean, like last year I did the my test in call center. It was fun. But at the same time, I was still on the phone with people, and
Mhm.
they usually like get into like somehow it just always turns out like people are inclined to tell me their personal stuff, even if I'm not really asking them.
Yeah,
It's just
it's
like,
funny how that happens when you actually listen to people.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was like picking the hardest thing I was pretty much able to come up with, and I was thinking like, okay, was the most challenging thing around mindset that I still need to overcome. And at the time, I really hated to be on the calls, like on the phone calls. I would text you and I would do like all the emails and like Facebook stuff and all those kind of things. I didn't have an issue with that, but talking with people on the phone, it was like, no, like why would you call me? It's just no.
That sounds like 40% of it. Like, why would you call me? Seriously. Do you think I'm just sitting around waiting for you to call me? Think I have nothing better to do? I'm going to hear about that later. But the point
Yeah,
being,
sure you will.
I'm definitely going, it's okay. Um,
Yeah, so I don't know, like honestly, I could do plenty of things because thanks to mindset, I'm just like reframing things and I'm having actually fun in everything I do. I mean, like really in every job I always find an angle where I could have fun and learn something.
yeah, it is kind of funny how once you create the state, it's I can already feel what the next time we talk about things is going to be about, because like it's already starting to accidentally drift towards it. But like when you're coming from the right state of things, you change the nature of what's going on around you. Just like how when you're bored as a kid, like nothing, like everything just seems so boring. It's like the world gets more boring because you're bored when it doesn't. It's the same thing with being interested. Like I can't imagine the last time I was bored. Like people will message me like, hey, and it's like, are you working? And it's funny because the way that somebody phrased it helped me think of my own phrase, was just like, just because I don't have to work doesn't mean I don't have work to do, because I always have work to do because I want to be working. Like that's so, but again, like there are people who all they want to do is get home from work and relax. Uh, and I feel sorry for those people. But the point being that
Okay.
I think a big part of being an effective, well, anything, but relative to the theme of the call of being a coach or mentor, is that it has to come from, I think, an individual journey rather than like you're just good at what you do and then you see an advertisement, which is what I think happened with a lot of the Dimitri coaches. So it's also funny because like I'm an American, like I never run into somebody named Dimitri. But imagine being in a country where like there are like a decent number of Dimitris, and maybe you have been because you've been around a bit, but and then like there's just Dimitri just feels bad because everybody's like, I want to be a Dimitri. Uh, but yeah, I guess it's one thing that was really frustrating for I know a lot of people when we were first getting into marketing was like they would like this person would like want to coach them, and in our case it was like a business model, so like a client getting model or something like that. But then kind of like what you alluded to before, these so-called coaches didn't really they didn't know how to do what we needed to do. They just had a outreach model to push on us.
Yeah.
And the issue with all that is that they don't even know whether it works or not. So how can you say if it works or it doesn't work if you don't if you're not doing it? And even if you get somebody to like sign on with you, and this is something that I never understood, because even if you get somebody to sign on with you, if it's not a good fit, it's going to be like obvious from the jump, the get-go, the start, the other phrasing for like the very beginning. So I don't even get why people try to do that, because it's such a, a bad business model to do. But I think that also speaks to the neediness of people at that stage, which is, I guess that's kind of the big trap for a lot of people, is that early stage of being an entrepreneur in whatever the capacity is, where you're more focused on not being homeless than you are on helping people, which doesn't happen to everybody, but it does seem to be the case for the people who are inauthentic. And I mean, did you ever experience, or knowingly at least, like any element of like stigma when it came to the coaching thing? Because I know that you don't just push stuff on people either. So it's interesting if you even experienced it because you don't do what everybody else does.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like there is so many. The one thing that everybody should pay attention to is when you're on the discovery call and they just try to push you to the certain outcome,
Okay.
like lining up the questions and not allowing you the space for you to actually say what you want to say,
Mhm.
or, just like feeling that you're not listened to. Because on that discovery call, you should have some kind of connection, like even if it's not going to work out because, I don't know, you don't have the budget for it, or you're not the right fit, you're not there yet, it's really important to see where those boundaries are, and if the coach is actually trying, or mentor or whoever is trying to connect with you, because you're still building some kind of relationship. Like you don't have to end up with the client, but you can end up with the person who will refer to like you to some kind of person who really needs your help and
Right.
can afford to pay you. So then it's not a waste of time. But most of the people who are those kind of 2 steps ahead coaches, they will be like, oh no, they didn't have the money, or they try to like blame you or shame you into, or guilt you into like getting into coaching. I mean, like what kind of coaching is it going to be if you're starting with the position of like ridiculously low state of mind, and they would guilt you in it?
Imagine if you were walking by, and it's funny because I need to remember that like the context that we know is not something that somebody else would know. But imagine if before you started training at do they call it the temple, the Shaolin, like the place where you learn Shaolin
Yeah.
from? Okay. I didn't know if the like temple was something that like it was always designated, or if that was only certain places.
It's not always, it's just like the specific places where it's actually looking like a temple. Otherwise, it's just the gym and stuff.
Okay, because it was just funny to me to like think of like imagine you just walking by the dojo and like your master just comes chasing after you, says, "Look, you know, you need to be careful out there. You don't want to be walking around without the ability to defend yourself." You know what I mean? He's just like kind of following you down the sidewalk, and then like when you're not interested, well, well, fine, well, you go, get assaulted then, or something like that, because that's basically what the coaches are doing, you know, or the two steps ahead coaches, which is I think probably going to be the Dimitri name for them. Uh, I could always find a way to make fun of people.
It's it.
Ones who deserve it, in my mind. But yeah, to think about it from again, and like it as we understand it, as coming from the needy element, where it's like you're just kind of a wallet to them in that case. Um, Not you being the coach, and the person's the wallet, you being the person, and the two steps ahead person is viewing the person as a wallet, which is why they don't care about it. Which, us both having been in call centers, makes a lot of sense, because I mean, I think it probably depends on what you're selling, or what you're like even talking to them about, because I mean there's customer service call centers. But when I was doing like rental insurance, uh, it doesn't matter when, but when I was doing it, we had a thing where we were trying to always move them one step down the process to get to the end. And it's funny because I didn't know why then, but it just didn't make sense to me. It just seemed dumb. And now I understand. It's like, well, when people feel like they're just getting pushed down the hallway, when they reach the door, they're gonna be like, screw you, I'm not going through that door. Like, people don't like being told what to do or led around like that. And I think that's why a lot of the people are kind of really off-putting with how needy they are, because like you said, with to keep an eye out for that, like when you can't talk, or when they don't seem interested in what you're talking about, or where you're coming from, or what your actual challenges are, it's just a huge red flag when it comes to people like that. And I've never known anybody who helped me who tried to get me to allow them to help me that way, by just forcing me into something. Because how can you help somebody if you don't even know if they're the right person to help? Like there's a guy, maybe you know him. His name's John Caprani. Like he knows a lot of people. It's hard hard to not know, or at least know of John. And a dating coach approached him too. He's married happily with 2 kids. I'm pretty sure that one of his kids, and maybe even his wife, was in his profile photo when he was approached. And it's like, dude, at least me, I understand, right? Because I didn't have a relationship status. It was just me in the photo. I'm younger, etc. Like, at least I'm part of the I don't know if it'd be demographic, whatever the age version of, demographic is. But yeah, tangent, in case somebody didn't know. But I guess when it comes to the difference between all that, do you think that it's kind of inevitable that people who approach it like, the two steps ahead coaches, that they're always going to kind of just fall out of it? Or do you think sometimes that people don't even mean to be like that, and they're basically just sold on that kind of approach getting into being a coach, and then maybe over time they do realize, like, wait, this doesn't work, like this doesn't work for me or for other people, and they do become more of a genuine kind of coach or mentor? Like, have you seen that at all? Or is my question really confusing? Because you can say that too.
Yeah. No, actually, I'm just thinking like if I have experienced that. Like I think from my point of view, the worst case scenario is where that one person is actually help you with one thing. So
Okay.
they help you with one thing, but then they like don't know anything else. and they try to push you into cooperation, or like to continue cooperation as a client and some kind of coach or mentor or whatever. And then just because you already see that they brought you the result for that one thing that they know how to do, you are expecting that it's going to be the same with the another one. But then it's not coming, and the results are not there, and you start to feel like a failure because it's not working. And
Right.
it's not because of the coach, because he already like got you the result before.
So it's
Start to
kind of
blame
gaslighting in
yourself.
a way.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it kind of is, because it's just how a lot of them are working. Or like, those kind of things like, oh, I don't need to know, I'm gonna ask my coach.
Yeah, it is kind of, it kind of goes into a different element of the darker uh, facets of the industry, where you will have people who are, essentially like, and this is a reason why like I always had an issue with like, so like trusting in social workers and therapists and stuff like that, is that their business model literally benefits by you never fixing your problems.
Yeah.
They don't, it's not like they get a bonus if they help you like overcome things. They just don't have somebody to work with anymore if you don't need them. And so that's why when it came to coaches, like I saw things that way, where it's like, there are a lot of people where it's like, okay, well, if your business is going great, then you don't need to pay them anymore, do you? Maybe you do, but if your business outpaces them, then inevitably you're going to be like, well, I appreciate you getting me here, but then most people are just going to go their own way. And so what you have there, if for the needy people, the needy coaches, and it seems to be more the case with like coaches than mentors, probably, but I imagine there, it applies in both cases, where they try to create like this eternal scenario where you as the mentee coachee, I don't know what it would be, like the student, whatever it is, would
Yeah.
always need a little bit more or this or that. And I think that's something that a lot of people are skeptical about as well, where it's that like, if I let this person like be my coach or whatever, they just, of course they're going to find something else that's wrong with me, because it's like their business model.
Yeah, but like if you start to actually like work on yourself, there are things showing up. So it's natural that you will have a lot of things coming up. But at the same time, a good mentor or a good coach can lead you to like the core problem instead of dealing with the symptoms. Because you
Right.
can have like million sessions with symptoms, and there will be new symptoms showing up because you still haven't dealt with that core issue.
Yeah, if you only treat the bleeding and you don't actually stitch the wound, you're just going
Yeah.
to have more bleeding. You can use all the different bandages or band-aids you want. It's not going to change that it's still going to be bleeding.
So I think that's the main issue, because most of them, especially those two steps ahead coaches, they're dealing just with the symptoms. They don't understand where the core issue or why the problem is actually, or where it's coming from.
Because again, like you
They don't have
mentioned
the
in the
experience.
beginning, yeah, they don't know the essence of it. They don't know the way. They only know the punch. I'm just going to keep taking you back to the martial arts metaphors, because it is a good metaphor. I guess it's becoming an analogy now, because it's becoming an extended, set of metaphors. But I think that is not I'm going to say red flag, but yeah, it's definitely like the thing where self-awareness definitely comes into kind of necessity, really, because if you can't tell the difference between somebody helping you uncover something that's uncomfortable and somebody just creating a need so that you need to pay them again, I can imagine that would be very confusing and conflicting for somebody who, like, maybe they did get like a result with this coach before, but now they don't know if this thing that they've uncovered with the coach is like the coach actually trying to help them with a root cause, or if it is just the coach like maybe even knowingly focusing on a symptom rather than a root cause because they know that it'll keep popping up. So that is kind of like the darker element of things, which actually takes me in another direction that I had wanted to address before the call, which is, and I've kind of addressed it on my own in the past, but where there's kind of this proliferation of people trying to become, you know, significant in some way, whether it's a coach or an influencer or whatever. And inevitably, many of those people want to help others, right? Or at least, you know, they say that they do. But the issue is that just like what you said, where like a coach can only help you, like they can't help you any farther than what they know, right? Or they can just put a framework on you, but they won't even know the framework necessarily. You'll have people who maybe the only reason they're a coach or whatever to begin with is because they have their own insecurity about something that they need to validate by having to convince other people of, you know, what it is. And what you have in that case is not just someone who's like trying to like squeeze somebody for money, but somebody who's kind of fucking other people's heads up. And that's the case with at least I think with like people who say that they like romance related, they are afraid to open themselves up and be vulnerable or something. And so instead of accepting that and facing it, or even just like knowing that that's the case, they delude themselves into thinking that people are trying to control them or that, you know, whatever. And so they just want to be free and independent. And so they decide that they want to spread that message to others. Maybe it's as an influencer, in this case, you know, say it's like a coach or whatever. But because it's like a corrupted kind of situation, the only thing that they're going to basically do is replicate that almost like virus onto other people.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, no, what are your thoughts on that? Because I had already talked
Yeah,
about it.
actually, like I really like that you came up with this because I kind of triggered a lot of people on some of the conversation because this kind of
Good.
thing
That's what
is
we're about.
coming up like frequently, and there is actually a term for it. There's like it's called helper's high, where
Okay.
you get those like the dopamine from helping people, and at the same time it makes you feel better. But you're helping from that insecurity that you know like you either are not good enough or you have some kind of value issues or you do it for some kind of reason just to ignore what's going on in your life. And you know everybody is sharing it like, oh, this is a great way how to like get better mood, you know, or just like get better, you know, you will change your mood, you will feel better if you help somebody.
Right.
But at the same time, like what kind of like state of mind you're helping them from? Like you can
Right.
make it even worse, you know, like if you're a coach and you will be helping somebody with this kind of needy or low energy, you can actually make it worse because you on a subconscious level you have some kind of beliefs that you will imply or like just imprint into the person you are coaching.
Right. And it's even worse is because many people who are looking for coaching are already in a like unstable position to begin with.
Yeah.
You're in an even better position if you're like that to mess them up rather than them just being like, oh, like, you know, where they just feel like there's something off about you because they're so desperate in that case. And people who are desperate make bad decisions. Uh, you know, case in point of like, you know, the state of mind and energy you're coming from. So it's like, not only is it the wrong place to come from, and not only is the person trying to spread the wrong idea, message, whatever, but they're speaking to people who will not know necessarily any better and who may take it to heart. And also, quick aside, the first comment I saw from a vet was just her saying, and it's hilarious because she never used to talk like this. Like, Lana, I kind of triggered a lot of people. Good job with that, but it's just funny because she never used to do the whole thing of like, oh, this person colon. I think she picked that up from me, or maybe she did. Sidetracked, but that is something that I am really concerned about in the modern day, because I mean, it's the same thing as people, needing to weigh in on every damn topic because of course their opinion's so important, right? And it's going to make a huge difference on the actual thing itself. You may or may not be able to elicit my sarcasm or discern my sarcasm. Sarcasm has already been elicited, but the point being is that you have the people who are deluding themselves into thinking that, first of all, they're making a positive change, or that they're even in a position to help to begin with. And it is kind of tragic in a way because, like, on a level, I'm sure that like some of it is compassion because they want to keep somebody from making the same mistake they did, but they also don't understand that what they're seeing is the mistake and what the true mistake is are not the same things.
Yeah.
So it's like we're still, it propagates more of those situations that cause them pain in the first place, because I always mention this when it comes to like relationships and stuff like that, where it's that, you have like the people that think, oh, like, oh, like the girls that think, oh, like all guys are just cheating trash. And the guys think, oh, all girls are just cheating trash. Like, guys don't care. Girls, can't care about something more than 5 seconds. Like, you get like these ridiculous generalizations that go back and forth, and more people hold on to this thing. And so they kind of make it true in that instance. And so then these people have this stereotype, and what you just have is a bunch of people who they're convinced of just how horrible this other side is. And they essentially do the opposite of what coaching is supposed to be doing, where it's, instead of being constructive, it's destructive. There we go. There's the word. English is my first language. So I guess, how do you kind of see that? I'm not going to say being fixed, but like, what do you think would have to happen for people to, in general, like, be able to see past this isn't even the 2 steps ahead coaches. These are like I don't know, the Whore of Babylon coaches. I don't know.
I mean, there is like nothing wrong with coaches per se. It's
Right.
more about the attitude you are coming to the discovery call. Like, you need to know what is it that you are looking for. Because even the coaches, they need to know what kind of result you want. And then it's much easier for you having clarity that, okay, this is what I want. Is the coach is asking me like the right questions, or do they have the intention of actually helping me, or do they trying to, I don't know, frame me into believing that I need something else, which happens quite a lot as well,
Right.
like, oh no, you don't struggle with this. This is not the thing that you actually need. This is what you need. And it's totally different.
And I guess, because I know that like you and me are very, very aware of what we want. Many people, I'm sure, would argue they're perhaps a little bit too aware. And I would say that it must be difficult to be them, but that's their problem. So I guess if you had to try to put yourself in the place of someone who is not as aware as we are, how would you recommend that? Because it's easy for us to spot BS and be like, yeah, no, like, I'm not falling for that. But
Yeah.
obviously they're different, personality types. And I mean, even just, I've gone into bad relationships in the past. So evidently, like, there are things I didn't spot. I mean, there are things that I did have blind spots of some sort. So I guess even just kind of maybe even thinking about some of situations where you've had your own blind spots, like, how would you recommend somebody kind of, if maybe they do have that now, trying to overcome it, or at least overcome it enough that they can get out of just going in the wrong direction with the wrong people. Because I feel like to have a good coach or mentor, you need to have the ability to pick, or be aware of things.
I mean, like going open-minded to that, like discovery call, and actually take some time afterwards, like not be like, yes, 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 like you will get those questions, like it's marketing. If they're a good salesperson, they will force you, or like they will try to have you not and agree with them as much as possible, so your answer at the end is yes.
Right, micro yeses or micro agreements, whatever it's called. Yeah.
You have those micro commitments, and then it's just like, or the thing about like coaching calls, just I guess if you don't have that awareness what you really want, I would do some kind of research first on my own. That's what I did. I just like went for some books on the topic and like did my own study. Because if you're not invested enough, you won't do the work like which is required during the mentoring or coaching.
Right, even if it is the right person.
Yeah. So if you're like, you can have as good coach as they go, and if you are not trusting yourself, or if you just don't do the work, you can waste a lot of money by just showing up on the calls where nothing is achieved.
Which is, it's kind of funny to me, knowing the like some of your situations in the past where like you had someone who was okay with like showing up and paying you or whatever, and like, oh, but I let them go. And I was like, oh, why? I was like, well, they weren't doing the work. Why would I want to work with them? So it's literally the antithesis of the, just coaching as a business kind of attitude, where it's like, well, if I can't help you because you're not if you're not doing what I say, I'm wasting my time and time that I could be devoting to somebody else that I could actually be helping.
And it's all about those boundaries, like if you don't respect what you're doing and you don't set those boundaries, and like, for example, even for me on discovery calls, if somebody is going to be, I don't know, having struggles with alcohol or would want to stop smoking or stuff like that, I would be like, okay, I haven't struggled with it, so I can recommend you somebody who actually have more experiences with it and going to help you on much deeper level than I do. You can come back to me for some other stuff, like, I don't know, emotional mastery, dealing with triggers and stuff like that, which I can handle like easy,
Right.
and I can help them on much deeper levels so they really master what they need. But at the same time, like, I could tell them, like, I can help you with that because it goes back to psychology. I did these statements and stuff like that. I know that, but it's just not my thing. And if I know that somebody else is going to help them much faster or easier, or they just have more experiences, so they will just be more helpful, it's within my integrity to just recommend them somebody else, even if I'm losing money.
Right, which I think is the approach that everybody should always take, because it's like, it's the same thing with being like, for example, a copywriter, or someone says, oh, like, do you write this or whatever? And like, if you know what you're doing well enough, you can always just figure it out. But then at the same time, there's sometimes when somebody is just like not ready for something, and if they say, or not ready, not aligned, whatever it is, and if they say otherwise, like, they're doing both people a disservice, because first of all, they're going to make it really, I'm gonna say really stressful. Yeah, like, it's, they're not going to do as good of a job as they could, and they probably won't enjoy it. So like, what's really the point? Money in that case, which is kind of, I guess, again, like, coming from the needy position. And sometimes it's not even, sometimes it's a lot easier to be needy. I'm aware of that, because it's somebody who has like a financial cushion of some sort is not going to feel it as much as somebody who, they don't have rent, like they're making it now or they're not. So I get that there's a realism element to it as well. It's not just a matter of character, because I forget what the quote is, but it's like every, I think it's like every desperate man is a coward or something like that. Like if somebody is desperate, it's a hell of a lot easier to be coming from a bad state of mind, I guess. I suppose you're already necessarily in that. Never mind. Sidetracked.
Yeah, I don't think I can agree with that, because like the more desperate you get, the more needy the energy, the less chance you have to actually get the people or the clients or the money you want. So
Right.
it's more about like positioning, because you know, like from the business point, or like business owner point of view, like you're presenting yourself as somebody, you
Mhm.
know, like copywriter who is really good or whatever, you know, like professional. And at the same time, you are extracting that kind of like needy, I need you, and like desperate energy. And if you look at it from like the outside, like why would this person who is professional would be in this kind of desperate state, you know? It just
Right.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Well, I was coming more so from the fact that it's since we know that, and we know that like we can't allow ourselves to be making decisions from desperation, because we're essentially setting ourselves up for failure in one way or another. I guess I'm just trying to like be aware of the situation where like sometimes like, yeah, people just don't have the money. And so I understand that like it's a lot easier to be needy in those cases. It's not going to increase the chances of success. It's
Yeah.
just, a real life factor. So um yeah, I mean, it's when it comes to coaching it, there's a lot of things I feel like I don't have enough perspective on. So I mean, was there anything that like you would wanted to mention that like I've kind of been completely sidetracking things from?
I think like just the online thing when on discovery calls, just like make sure that if you are actually like looking for a coach, just see what they are sharing online. And if they are not presenting themselves online, then like just go on intuitive level and go with your gut. If that person is just doesn't feel right,
Hmm.
just don't do it. Like I have been coached before by coaches who triggered me, but that's totally different because I went there with, okay, he's triggering the shit out of me and I need to find out why.
Man.
So it was actually helping me because I was looking for the person who would be able to do that. But if you are feeling bad about your coach and you don't trust them, or there is just something not right, it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a something that you need to get a feel for as time goes on, because something that I noticed is that a lot of people can't tell the difference between something that's wrong and something that's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
which is really unfortunate, because you kind of need to do what's uncomfortable to get further away from what's wrong. Um, but that again, it's one of those situations where obviously it's I'm not gonna say easier for us, but like it definitely helps to be intentionally self-aware rather than somebody who's still kind of coming from the attitude of, well, this person will fix me. It's like, no, that's not how it works. That's absolutely not how it works. But even when it comes to the notion of um, pursuing that kind of triggering element, I think it requires a degree of self-honesty where you're even thinking not that you're the problem, but that you acknowledge that there's something to alter, right? Something to improve. And I think even at that level, again, it comes back to the neediness versus the pursuit of growth in that case, because like there are people, just like how there are people who nothing can ever be their fault ever. There are people who are looking for ways to make it their fault. And it's not because they're trying to take responsibility, but it's because they're kind of addicted to that process of, oh no, like, and that was something that I never quite could figure out how to, I mean, if there even is a way to help somebody who's like that. or if that is just kind of a matter of like having to wait for them to come around to things on their own. Because I guess it just goes back to, it's like it takes two to tango, right? So it's like you can't help somebody if they're not prepared to do whatever, which you've already learned because you've had to drop people who just signed up and then didn't actually do the work.
Yeah,
But I
you
guess,
can't like, as a person, you can't like want for people change more than they do.
hmm,
That's like super important, because like you can pay me X thousand per session, but at the same time, if you're just showing up and not doing the work afterwards, it's just not going to stick, because we would have to have sessions every day for you to do that.
right.
Like there is still biological aspect to it, and you have to build that habit of thinking differently or showing up differently, building habits which are going to serve you, instead of like showing up once a week and then doing the same things over and over again. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, if you do a sport or something like that, but you literally only practiced in practice, like how could you ever expect to actually get like better? Like if you're not gonna work out or something, or if you're not going to like play like touch football with pals, okay, thanks computer. Um, yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like if you're not going to pursue that thing when you don't have this person guiding you, then you're just not going to be getting the reps in that you need to make the progress that you need. And I think that's also, I guess, kind of a way, I imagine, as a coach, to just spot kind of like a red flag situation where maybe somebody who just kind of talked themselves into thinking that they were serious about something. And then it's like, okay, I see what this is. This is like your New Year's, your New Year's resolution kind of thing.
Yeah,
Did
but
you?
you know, some people, sorry for jumping in, but like some people are just like feeling better about paying you for the
Right.
coaching, and that's enough for them to feel like they're doing something, but they're actually not doing anything.
Yeah. That's why it's eventually I just created the terminology of feel better versus be better, because and this is something that Yvette and I definitely don't agree with, and you and I probably don't agree with either, where it's that I believe that fundamentally the majority of people, which isn't to say it can't change, but fundamentally most people are just feel betters, which is that they're going through their day looking for something that will make them feel better without having to actually change. They want, to put something into a vending machine, get something that feels good out of it, and that's it. And the reason I believe that is because that's what I see most people doing. It's based on statistics, of my experience. But I think that's also what I guess gives me not hope, because I don't know, hope's unruly, but it's what makes me believe that people can also just do whatever they need to, because by the same token, because people create their own cycles of not improving, people also can always change themselves so that they are always improving. And so for me, I think that's part of where the frustration comes from when it involves like people not wanting to grow, which is that, why would you not want to? And I just don't understand it. I mean, I get it, but I don't understand it. So I think that's a big thing. Another reason why, like, I personally don't see myself ever being willing to not necessarily mentor someone, but ever like wanting to be in the line of work, because I simply do, well, not line of work, profession. Because I just do not have the patience for the people who are just BSing themselves. And I feel like I would probably, screw up my operation really quickly. But at the same time, like, there are definitely people who, like, they were inspired by seeing like an interview that I did or whatever, because they're not motivated or inspired, or they don't relate to the person who's making millions of dollars. They relate to the person who said like 2 years ago, I was a retail worker, you know? And I think that's a big part of being mentor, coach, whatever, is that personal connection of like the person believes not only that you can do what you say that you can do, or that you can teach someone, but that you can teach me. Because again, like we've already kind of alluded to, like the coach is only one, literally only one half of the equation. The other person needs to not only be able to spot if a coach is a fake, or also be prepared to show up, but they also need to believe that they can make the change, because a lot of people just don't.
Yeah, and it comes back to like trusting the coach or the mentor. Like if they don't build enough authority, or they don't show the person that they know what they're talking about, the clients will be less motivated to actually do the work because they won't believe that it's going to work for them.
Right.
And at the same time, if the mentor or coach or whoever is positioning themselves as something else than a human, and they're not sharing like the stuff that happened to them and that they had to overcome or something. If you don't have that connection, like human to human, it's just something unimaginable for the other person. Like, oh yeah, they are quite far away and they are totally somebody else, like godlike person on pedestal, which is not true. Like we all went through like some kind of changes, fuck ups and struggles, and everybody's dealing with it differently. But at the same time, we ended up on the other side. So there is a big chance that I can help you as well.
Right. Yeah, as long as the person is the right fit for the situation. Yeah. So I think it comes back to that balance of, the coach's experience and integrity, and the person's sincerity and like, I guess, minds. I mean, mindset's going to be part of everything, but it's like I'm just trying to think of it as in terms of factors.
I think attitude.
Attitude. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Because I mean, I think there are a lot of people that they want to change also, like they genuinely do want to change, but it's the same thing as like you can't, like a smoker doesn't stop smoking, right? As long as you think of yourself as a smoker who wants to give up smoking, you want to quit, you literally cannot, because you are already saying, I am someone who does this, I want to stop doing it. So, and that can work in the positive for other things, where it's like if you see it's like, no, like I'm an athlete, I can't not be an athlete, that's great, but yeah, not so much with other things. But also, I forgot that I didn't know that we had gone over. I know that you have other stuff that you have to do, so I'm sorry about that.
cool.
But I guess kind of in the spirit of spreading not the love, but I don't know, the building. I know that you have recently started a group as well.
Yeah.
I get however much time you have left. Like where were you coming from when you decided to do that, like now versus like before? And yeah, what are you trying to do with it?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be honest. Like I was planning to do the group, I think, since January, but I was just like really not into it because I hate all the technical stuff that goes with it. Like just setting it up and doing all the small things, and then just like really investing time, because it takes a lot of time to do that. And I really wanted to be in the right place to just be able to afford to invest that kind of time and to really show up for people who will be in the group and who will ask the questions. And I hate those kind of people who would just give shallow answers, like, oh, this is this, and you need to get on the call with me to figure out more. It's just like, how is that helpful? Like, why would I be in that group? So yeah, I decided just to do it differently. I did the outlines of for each month I have specific topic. And I started with my own framework where I separated like 3 different states of minds. Or it's not really, well, kind of is, but it's kind of like a dependence,
Okay.
which is the first state where you have those kind of childhood wounds, traumas, and all the kind of stuff. It's usually comes with that needy energy.
Okay.
The second state is like independence, where you free up from those first ones and you can exist on your own, but at the same time they're showing up some deeper unfinished things, and you're kind of lonely, and there's this imposter syndrome and all those kind of things showing up, because when you're alone, you're not supposed to be like a social being. You're just like not meant to be alone on our own, and it impacts like psychology and physiology and all those kind of things. So once you're in this state, it gets really comfortable to be on your own, but at the same time, you don't want to be on your own because you
Right.
feel lonely. So then there is the third stage, where you have interdependence and you realize that everything is connected and you need to be a part of some kind of tribe. You need to know how to deal with the relationships and handle them comfortably. You don't have to like just go and avoid people because you can deal with them, which most people do in the independent state.
As a, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
It is interesting to me to even hear of it in those states, and I'm gonna have to start like writing down the different the different themes of things, because I can already see the other calls happening, where I can like think of people who I can almost like vividly see that like all the things that they're talking about is just a manifestation of them not being willing to move from one phase to the next, which is like the one situation where I mentioned where like someone thinks they want like independence and freedom. It's like, oh, well, they're just not comfortable with being vulnerable or enough or connected to people truly where they have any sense of representation or, connection in that sense. So yeah, it is interesting to me as a framework.
Yeah, it's just super simple, and it just came to me, and I feel like attachment as it is, it's really important, because depending on how much attached you are to the things, you can really separate like yourself and even like include yourself into one of those three, and they will be like jumping from one to another at the same time, but for the most time they will be like in one of the groups.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, I can see how like maybe you would mostly be like in group two or whatever, but in one way somebody was still kind of in group one because they just didn't end up in a situation where that was stimulated as much, so they didn't see it as much before. But okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I need to spend more time in the group, because there have been positives of me not being in Facebook, and there have been negatives. So, is that like a group where like you're trying to like very much qualify the people who are joining it, or are you trying to make that like more of an open thing for people, like as long as
I'm definitely trying to build like a community, and I decided to share like openly everything that goes into dependence, because in that state you are much limited, and usually you struggle with money and all those kind of things. And because I'm taking now clients only who are already past that, they are either in independence or they are like above as the business owners and stuff. I was like, okay, let's just spread the message, share the knowledge. And actually, I wanted to have a place where people would find help and information, which I was looking for when I was starting, and everything would be paid, and then you would pay for something and you would get nothing, because it's just the same thing that is shared in the books.
right? Yeah, it's people just repackaging something, and it's like, oh, here's the package. I mean, whatever. If people want to go for that, it's their choice, because it's I guess there are times when people won't take action unless they pay for something. So there's occasionally something to be said for that, I guess, but that is neither here nor there for what we're talking about, I guess. But yeah, then I'll make a point of sharing like the join link for that in the comments, and then eventually in the description when I put this on YouTube. But yeah, thanks for coming by, and I look forward to the other conversations that we will be having that I need to remind myself of what they're going to be, because now I've gotten so drawn up in talking about things and I forgot. But well, I never have awkward endings to these calls. So this is the non-awkward ending of this ending, which is ending. And remember, I forgot.